Hey guys, Steve here from Bloom Audio, and this review is going to be Legend, wait for it, EVO. Legend EVO is Empire Ears' follow-up to the famed Legend X. EVO takes the basics of the Legend X, adds in the all-new Weapon 10 bone conduction driver, and hopes to create a new bass head flagship with next-level low-end power coupled with flagship quality full-range performance. So, how'd it go? Let's dig in. So one of the first things you might notice about Legend EVO is that Empire Ears updated their packaging. The box is slimmer, and the whole setup has been changed around. The sleeve. Pop this off. So far, it looks pretty familiar. Got this little sleeve with information, stickers, and your cleaning cloth in there. And then, so we've got the same selection of final ear tips that we're used to, some information about those, and then this cleaning tool. Just want to let you guys know there's a cleaning tool in here. Bloom's a pretty small operation, so not only do I make the videos, I also clean up everybody's returns. I just want to let you guys know that there's a tool in there to help you maintain your IEMs. So I've got here the stock Pandora case. Some of you who may have made a pre-order will get the fancy leather case, handcrafted. It's a very nice, beautiful case. This is more representative of the standard package. Inside, we've got the IEMs. So you can see they're updated with this new EVO logo, sort of a cross between, writing the word EVO. It sort of has that same wing shape as the main Empire Ears logo. Now the cable here is this PW Audio Empire Ears collaboration that was designed specifically for Legend EVO. It's a ultra high purity OCC copper. And it's also got this blue wrap in here, which gives it a really nice look. Obviously, very high quality connectors. This only comes in 4.4 millimeter. So if you don't have a device that supports that, you'll want to get an adapter. There are some other cable options. I talk about that in the written review. But this cable is an excellent pairing as it was designed for it. So yeah, in terms of the physical design, if you've gotten used to some of Empire Ears' more recent IEMs, they're very flashy, very sparkly, kind of inspired by what you might get in a custom IEM. These are just a plain black. Now it is somewhat translucent. You can see if I catch the light right there, that's the Weapon 10 driver in there. You can also, if you get the right angle, you can catch a look at some of the balanced armatures and dynamic drivers in there as well. Now, this is a pretty beefy IEM, and you're going to need to get a really good seal for the best performance. So you should just keep that in mind, especially with the bone conduction. I felt like I needed to really push the seal on that to make sure it was making good contact with the ear. But yeah, another great, well-crafted product from Empire Ears, with the whole package. And I especially love how they have these unique cables specifically designed and suited for each IEM. Legend EVO's sound is a bit of a contradiction. The bass here is obviously the star of the show, but what makes it work is the interplay between the bass and the rest of the sound signature. So first of all, this is the deepest, thickest, hardest hitting bass that I've ever heard in an IEM. But on the other end, it's also the best controlled bass in any bass head IEM that I've ever heard. I think this is largely thanks to that Weapon 10 bone conduction driver, which handles the deepest reaches of the sub bass from around 30, 35 hertz down below the range of human hearing. And it's supposed to not only provide the audible parts of that, but also the sensation, even where we can't hear the actual tone. So that frees up the Weapon 9 drivers, where you have those dual other dynamic drivers like the Legend X did. And it frees up the tuning there to give them more options, which I think is how they pull off this incredible impact, depth that goes along with a sense of separation between the bass and the mids, but also a cohesion there between the bass and the mids. There's the sense of separation where you don't have any kind of feeling of muddiness or the bass bleeding into the mids, but then where appropriate, you get the sense of those lower mids adding depth and color to the tonality of what's happening in the bass. A bass guitar and a drum playing together, you get the impact, you get the hit, you get the rumble, but then you also feel some of the texture of the bass guitar and get the detail inside of that. It sort of feels like this death-defying tightrope walk that Legend EVO pulls off. While the bass is definitely the MVP here, once you get out of the bass, the rest of the sound is very well crafted. The soundstage and imaging, the presentation of acoustic or electronic instruments, and the placement of vocals in the mix, it's all very top-notch. In terms of instrumental and vocal timbre and presentation, most stringed instruments have a sound that's natural, just a touch bright. While I think brass and wind instruments do very well here. You get a good presence that cuts through the mix, but remains smooth at the top. So an example of this would be with classic jazz, or even going back into some big band, where things like clarinets, trumpets, saxophones, they cut through the mix. They feel like they're loud and upfront during a solo, but they don't have any kind of harsh or biting tone to it. Female and male tenor vocals are also strong. While some lower male vocals could feel like they're maybe lacking a little bit of weight, something like an Elvis Costello could use just a little bit more weight with the Legend EVO, but the vocal presentation overall is strong, and it avoids sibilance or nasal overtones that you might hear in some IEMs. Honestly, the whole sound signature is very well constructed, and the performance feels like a flagship IEM, even if you didn't have that incredible bass in there. But when the bass does hit, it really does take it to another level. When I was thinking about comparisons for Legend EVO, there were two Empire Ears IEMs that seemed like an obvious place to start. Legend X and Odin. Now, in comparison with Legend X, given the higher price point and everything else, we would hope to see Legend EVO demonstrate some real differentiation there. And I see two major points of differentiation, even though the general sound is pretty close. One is in the bass. Legend EVO's bass is bigger punch, more impact, goes lower with the deeper rumble, just all around. There's more bass quantity and quality with EVO. The other is that while in terms of overall performance, Legend X might score 1 or 2 points, particularly I think in that some of the vocal issues I mentioned before, overall Legend EVO's tuning is stronger, and whether it's in terms of the instrument and vocal timbre, or things like the sense of separation between instruments, particularly in that separation yet cohesion between the bass and the mids. So where Legend X has a little bit more bleed into the mids from the bass, it doesn't have that same feeling of cohesion that EVO gives you. And certain aspects of the highs, Legend X doesn't have quite the detail and presence in some of the wind or brass instruments that EVO does, while EVO provides that sense of presence along with avoiding some of the harsh overtones that Legend X hits you with sometimes. Priced about $300 apart at $30.99 and $33.99. I guess that's exactly $300 apart. Legend EVO and Odin as flagship models are sort of like cats and dogs, yin and yang, the Beatles and the Stones. You just know somewhere inside you're going to pick one or the other. With the Odin, in the bass, it gives you what's essentially a more reserved version of the Legend X. And we already know how that goes between Legend EVO and Legend X. Now in the mids, Odin demonstrates some real strengths in those timbre issues with the vocal delivery, the instrument delivery, and all of that, with a lot of transparency where EVO can't quite match that Odin's mid-range performance. And again, in the treble, Odin can be a touch bright, but it has this great sense of air and space, very strong imaging and definition, owing to its treble performance. Again, EVO has great imaging, very strong in terms of the presentation, the definition, but not as good as Odin. If you're watching this, you probably kind of know this instinctively though, right? I don't think it's going to be a checklist or anything else. I think you know in your heart which one is right for you. Going back to the Legend X, which is sort of our core comparison here, most of EVO's sound is somewhat similar with some subtle tweaks to what Legend X is doing. But the bass is something else entirely, with more quantity, more quality, this incredible integration of this massive bass sound with a complete, well-crafted sound signature. In the end, Legend EVO does exactly what the name says. It's the next step in Empire Ears IEM evolution and the start of a whole new legend. Thanks for watching. You can check out Legend EVO and a lot of other great gear at bloomaudio.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back soon with more hi-fi personal audio content.